We are continuing our sermon series we've been going through, which is called Onward, where what we're looking at is we're looking at Jesus' teaching about this new path in life that he offers to us. And he goes, you've been living this way. I've got a new way that you can live. Here's how you can do it. And up to this point in our series, what we've been doing is Jesus has been looking at the big picture things. He's been looking at how you join him. He's been looking at what he expects out of your life. And he's been looking at your motivation behind the things that you actually do in your service to God. This morning, though, he's going to shift gears a little bit, and he's going to start talking about the nuts and bolts of what it actually looks like to be a follower of Jesus Christ, to follow him on this path. And he begins to redefine what our lives should look like on a daily basis. Now, what we're going to do to start things off this morning is in a minute, I'm going to put some statements up on the screen, and there's going to be the last word cut off of all of them, and I want to see how many of these that you can finish the sentence off with me, because they are cultural statements. They are things that you have heard probably multiple times before, or you have uttered yourself from your very own mouth, but they are cultural things that most of us should share in common. So let me go through these with you, and just read them along with me and see if you can complete them. The first one, when it rains, it... Okay, you got that one. Next one. The early bird gets the... Very good. 2 for 2. There's a sucker born every... All right. Next one. Nice guys finish. Wow. Okay, good job. A jack of all trades is a master of... Okay. All's well that ends... Well, all right. Never judge a book by its... This is the best you guys have ever done on one of my things. Usually I think it's going to work and it doesn't work. I'm very excited this morning. All right, here we go. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw. Very good. Okay, you can't teach an old dog new. All right. Beggars should not be. Wait, somebody said something other than choosers. What was it? I don't know. I heard someone say something different. I was going to point you out and mock you, but no. Okay, here we go. Better safe than measure twice, cut. Is that my last one? Nope, next one. Okay. Speak softly, but carry a big... All right, very good. All right, we know these statements because they are part of our culture. They're just things we grow up with. We hear them all the time. Today, Jesus is going to deal with some cultural statements, some cultural beliefs that the people of his time knew, just like you knew these. They knew these same type of sayings, and he's going to address them, and he's going to redefine what they mean to these people and how they should act according to the things they know. So that's why he's going to deal with this morning. If you have your Bibles with you, we're still in Matthew chapter 5. We're going to be starting in verse 21. I have people ask all the time, what version do I use on the screen? I use it NLT, the New Living Translation. The reason for that, it's the easiest one to read for groups and stuff like that, so that's the one I reference. But you'll see today I'm going to actually bring back some of the other translations for a couple of the terms here today, because your Bible might say differently than what you see on the screen. So here's where it starts. Matthew 5:21. Jesus says this. He's got this crowd before him, and he says, you have heard that our ancestors were told, you must not murder. If you commit murder, you are subject to judgment. All right, so he says to this crowd, you've all heard, do not murder. Why have they heard that? It's the 6th commandment, all right, is do not murder. King James, just to clear things up, says do not kill. That's actually a bad translation of that term. It actually is do not murder. So he's going, you've heard, do not murder. From your teachers and stuff like that. If you do, you'll be subject to judgment. You'll go to the courts. You will have consequences. But then Jesus is going to say this to him. But I want you to go deeper than that. I want you to go deeper than just thinking as long as I don't kill anybody, I'm good with God. And here's what he says next. He says, but I say, if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. So then Jesus says, you've heard if you murder someone, you're subject to judgment. I'm telling you, if you're even angry with someone, you're subject to judgment. Now, let me clear up a couple things. Jesus is not saying having anger is the same thing as murdering someone. All right? He's not saying that. I want to clear that up, because if you're angry with me, that does not give you a license to go kill me. All right? Just so we're all clear on that, I'd rather have you angry with me than killing me. I'd prefer that over the other. So he's not saying anger necessarily is the same thing as murder. He's not even saying all anger is bad, because if you know Jesus' life, there are several times he is angry, and it's actually labeled as righteous anger, which means it was a righteous anger. It was good in God's eyes. So he's not even saying all anger is bad. What he is going to do is he's going to present to us how anger can cross the line where it becomes just the same thing as murder. And he's going to present that to us. He says this. He says, if you call someone an idiot. Now, if you're reading from the NIV, you might see the word rekka there. And he says, if you say to someone rekka, you are in the dangers of being brought to the court. Now, real quick, what this first meaning is this. If in your anger you insult someone and you tear into them, at that point you are subject to possible being pulled before the court. This is bad because yesterday I think I called 2 of our teens idiots like 3 times to their mom. I apologize, you two. And then I'm preaching on it this week. I should have learned. But I did that in a loving way. Yes, I did. I really did that in a loving way. So anyways, he's going, basically, when you are angry, you are not to insult people and lash out with your words. Then he goes on to say this, and he says, and if you curse someone, or in your translations, it might say if you call someone a fool. This is probably a better translation where they tell you what it really means. If you curse someone, you are in the dangers of the fires of hell. Now, what this is implying here is when you curse someone is this. When you're angry, you start to condemn people by saying things such as, I hope you burn in hell. It's another degree of insult. It's not just you're an idiot or you're a jerk or I hate you or whatever. It's, I hope you burn in hell. And it's not said in a jest way. It's not said in a ha funny way. It's in a, I really hope that happens to you. Okay, I'm not going to murder you, but I really hope you spend the rest of your existence in hell. That's what he's referencing. So he says, if you curse someone, you are in the danger of the fires of hell. What Jesus here is talking about is this, how you will let anger affect you. What you do when you become angry. And he's going, if you lash out with words, if you lash out by condemning people to hell, at that point, you are crossing the line and you are committing sin just like the murderer. That's just a sinful action as the guy that murdered someone. They have been taught their whole lives, just don't murder people, but you can condemn people all you want. You can say bad things about them all you want when you're angry. You can lash out however you want. And he's going, no. If you're going to follow me, it's going to change. Which is, if you're going to follow me, I want you to watch your mouth. I want you to control your anger, and I want you to control your words when you get angry. And the next thing we're going to see here is this. He's going to give you some scenarios and go, let me show you how that plays out in your life, okay? He gives the generic, don't let anger control you. But now he's going to go, here's the next thing. You need to learn how to swallow your pride. You need to know how to swallow your pride, because a lot of times your pride will get in the way of you being effective witnesses for Jesus Christ in this world. And he's going, you've got to learn how to swallow it. So here's what it says in Matthew verses 5, 23, and 24. He says, so if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple and suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar, go and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Now, this is kind of foreign to us as Americans, but back in that time, offering a sacrifice at the temple was a pretty important thing you did in your relationship with God. And he makes a point here, if you get to go give your sacrifice at the temple, and he says, and you remember that you've done something to someone else. And this reference here seems to imply you were the one at fault. Not someone just did something to you. You were at fault and you lashed out possibly with your words, or you condemned someone and you said something you know you shouldn't have said. Before you offer your sacrifice, go and be reconciled to them. Go find who they are, where they are, repair the relationship, and then come back and then have your relationship with me. I want you to be reconciled to the people around you. You see, pride gets in the way of us seeking reconciliation, even when it's our fault a lot of times. Maybe you've done this in your life. You've done something you knew was wrong. You said words and you acted a way that you knew were improper to someone. but your pride stopped you from going back and repairing that relationship. And what you do, just human nature, what we do, we start thinking up how we were justified in doing it, even though in the back of our minds we always know we were wrong. How many of you have done that before? Dude, this Sunday is going fantastic. Because you guys know this. Usually when I say, how many of you do that, I'm saying I do this, and you're all like, I'm like, dude, I'm just an oddball. But here's the thing. We all know how that feels, which is we do something, but then pride steps in, and instead of going and fixing that relationship, pride steps in, and it makes you go, no, I'm not going to. And I was actually right. I was justified for doing what I did or saying what I said. I was justified, so I'm not going to go back and repair that. But in the back of your mind, you know the Spirit's always going, you were wrong. Go take care of it. But your pride will overrule God's commands in your life. And Jesus is going, you need to find a way to swallow your pride. You need to go seek out those you've hurt. You need to find them and apologize to them. You need to ask for their forgiveness. And you need to see if you can find a way to reconcile that relationship between you and that person. Does that mean you will be the best of friends? No, but it does mean you need to repair the damage you have done and make the best effort you can to repair that broken relationship. Now, why do that? Let me tell you why. Because by doing that, you might actually stick out in a way that has an eternal impact on someone's life. All right? How many of you have had someone else do that to you and you've been on the receiving end? Where they've insulted you or something. It was their fault. Do you often get an apology? No. Have you ever? If you have, you can remember, Cynthia, you have. But here's the thing. If you have, you can remember exactly who they were. Even if you're not best friends with them anymore, and even if they still irritate you, you can remember exactly who those people were. Why? Because it was odd. And Jesus is going, I want you to be odd. Why? Your actions might stick out in a way that has an eternal impact on people's lives, and that's what's really important if you're going to be a follower of mine, if you're going to walk this path with me. He goes on to the next part. He says this, when you are on your way to court with your adversary. Now, again, this is assuming, from the best I can tell from the context, they have a good reason to take you to court. You did something that they have a just reason to take you to court. Because he says this, settle your differences quickly. Otherwise, your accuser may hand you over to the judge, who will hand you over to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. And if that happens, you surely won't be free again until you have paid the last penny. So next thing he says is you've done something, people can take legal repercussions against you and take you to court. Swallow your pride and deal with it quickly and reconcile that relationship and make amends for what you have done. And the reason here he's telling you to do this is for this reason. If you allow pride to settle in, you often will get yourself into bigger trouble than you should have gotten into. Now, I'm sure most of us can relate to this as well. We did something, we knew we did it, but our pride keeps us from apologizing for it and fixing it, and it leads to bigger consequences down the road that come back to haunt us. Been there? That's what he's talking about there, is he's going, I need you to understand, if you don't swallow your pride, you're going to have bigger issues, because that's going to come back and haunt you. He wants us to be aware that our consequences have actions if they are left unresolved. If you hurt people, if you offend people, if you think just not resolving them and just walking away, that forgive and forget and we don't think about it anymore, that it all goes away, usually it doesn't. In some way it comes back in some other avenue or whatever else. Somehow it comes back to nip you. And that's what Jesus is saying. You know what? Instead of getting yourself in bigger problems than you need to be in, settle it quickly. Deal with the person and make amends with them and go, how can I fix this? Yes, I was wrong. How can I fix this thing before you take me to court and actually sue me to get all that money back or whatever? How can I fix it? Again, Jesus wants you to be the oddball. Jesus wants you to take actions that stick out in this world so you might impact people's lives for eternity. Because as followers of his, he's already made this clear in the Sermon on the Mount. That is what his purpose for your life is when you start to walk this path with him. The next section that Jesus moves on to, he kind of switches to the other side of the coin. And now what he's going to talk about is this. You're not the offender, but you've been offended. And in these passages, there is a lot of misunderstanding, so I'm going to walk you through these. Here's what it says in verse 38. He says, "You have heard the law says the punishment must match the injury, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." All right, now the Jews knew this teaching well. They practiced this, which is basically how you were hurt, you got to hurt someone back equally. So an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And they knew this is how you live things out. And here's the thing. This is human nature when we get hurt. When we get hurt, we want the one that hurt us to feel the same hurt we did. We want to get even. We want to settle the score. Some of you are reactionary. My wife, for example, and what is said in here stays in here because she's with the kids. Remember that. Okay, that's our little secret in here. My wife is one, if I accidentally, physically hurt her, we've all had those times where you, hit your wife or she stubs a toe and I'm next to her or something happens, my wife instantly grabs for me and digs her nails in. And she holds on to me, trying to cause me pain until her pain subsides. That's the relationship I have. That's how it works, all right? So if she gets hurt and it's my fault somehow, she's going to cause me this pain the amount of time that she's in pain. And I don't even think she thinks about it. It's just instantly, there go the nails. I'm like, oh man, her toe must really hurt right now. Those types of things. Now, even if I wasn't at fault and she's next to me and she gets hurt, I still get punished, all right? That's just how our relationship works. But human nature is, I get hurt, I'm going to give you back the same hurt. That's what we all desire. But Jesus here is going to make it very clear that is not how we are to respond. As Christians, we are not called to respond the way the world responds. And he's going to go, here's how you do it. And he goes on, he says this, "But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also." Now, let me clear some things up. This passage is used a lot of times to teach, and it has been taught in the past, that this means Christians are just supposed to be passive people who let people beat the snot out of you. So if someone comes up and you are in the streets downtown and you've seen the phantom attacks where people come up and hit you, a lot of people see that and go, as a Christian, once they hit you and you go down, you need to stand back up and go, hey, I'm back here, hit the other side. That's not what it's teaching. What this was in context was this. This was an insult. This was, Heather, if you would come up here. No, you don't have to. I'm going to demonstrate how you would backhand someone, all right? So, okay. What he was talking about culturally here is this was a backhand slap that was a disrespectful thing, which is I'm going to insult you publicly in front of people. So, Kaylee, who didn't grab your packet when you were supposed to, and didn't tell your parents you were supposed to, an insult would be I would come up in front of everybody and I would be like, whack. Kaylee, you were wrong. Don't argue, I'm right. I'm just right on this right now. Okay, so anyways, it was an insult thing. So it was a public insult in front of people. That's what was going on. And Jesus tells us this, when you are publicly insulted, swallow your pride. Swallow your pride and don't react and offer the other cheek. So you get a backhand insult in public. He's going, instead of backhanding them back or saying things out of your mouth, you turn the other cheek. And you stay calm and you let them whack the other cheek if they want to, if they want to backhand you again. Now, why? Why would Jesus tell you to do something so crazy when someone publicly insults you? Not your fault. They just did it to you. Why would he tell you, swallow your pride, turn the other cheek, and let them whack that one? Let me tell you why. Because you represent Jesus Christ. And by doing that, you might do something so shocking that this person might have something eternal happen in their lives, and you might lay a seed and make an impact on their lives that leads them to Jesus Christ at some point, because that is so shocking to the rest of the way the world responds. You see, Jesus is making it clear that there are greater things at play than our pride in this life when you are a follower of Jesus Christ. We are here to impact people's lives for eternity. And if you repay public insult for public insult, nothing eternal will ever be done. All you will get into is a slapping match. That's all that will happen. And if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, Jesus goes, I want something more from you, because we are here to impact people's lives, not just trade tit for tat. That's not why we are here. Next, he goes into this in Matthew chapter and verse 40. He says, if you are sued, so this time the assumption would be you're being falsely sued to some degree. Someone's taking advantage of you. And he says, if you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, so you lose the judgment and they take your shirt, he says then give them your coat too. So it says you're in court, the person sues you for unjust reasons, they actually win the suit in court, they get your shirt. He doesn't tell you to resolve it before you get there. He doesn't say, as a Christian, you don't have to defend yourself. But if you lose in the court, so they get your shirt and it's unjust whether you agree with it or not, he says, then you take your coat and you offer it to him as well. Again, why? Why would Jesus tell you to do that? Here's why. Because if they win the court case and they get your shirt and that's where it ends, they will walk away satisfied and justified and feel like I got their shirt. I got what I wanted from them. And at that point, that is all over and it's water under a bridge and both people go on to live the rest of their lives. But if that happens to you and you give them more than what they asked for, what you will see is you have an opportunity to leave a lasting mark on these people's lives that might have an impact for eternity. And that's what Jesus wants you to grasp and understand. That's what your life is about. It's not about your personal pride. It's about representing Jesus Christ and having an eternal impact on the people around you that you interact with, whether they treat you well or whether they treat you poorly. You are here to impact their lives with Jesus Christ, and we are to represent him. The next thing he goes on to, another instance, he says this in verse 41, if a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Let me stop for a second so you understand the historical side of this. Back in that time, the Romans were an occupying force in Israel. And what they were allowed to do as an occupying force is, let's say Reagan is here and I'm a Roman soldier and she's a Jew. I'm occupying her land. Is she going to like me? No, she hates my guts. Why? I'm an occupier. But back then, I had a right to see Reagan and go, hey, Reagan, I want you to carry all my gear and you owe me a mile to walk it. The legal system with the Romans were basically this. She had to walk a mile. If she did not, she could be arrested and she could go to court and she could be punished. As a citizen of Israel, you had to do what the Roman asked you to do and you owed them 1 mile. Not a step more, but you owed them a mile. And what Jesus says here is, obviously, he's referencing people that go, I hate it when they ask me to take their stuff for a mile because I hate those soldiers. They're occupiers. I hate those filthy Romans. They're over our country and they treat us poorly. I hate it when they ask me to take their stuff for a mile and I resent them. And Jesus says to them, you know what? If he asks you to take it a mile, you carry it too. Give to those who ask and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. All right? Again, what Jesus is saying is this. If all you do is what people ask you to do, you will leave no impact on their lives. If you go over and above what they ask you to do, there's a real possibility you leave an impression on their life that might have an eternal impact on them someday. You might be planting a seed. If all you do is what people ask you to do and demand that you do, that's all there is to it. But you can give more and you can do something that might last for eternity. Right? That's what Jesus wants you to understand. Jesus is asking a lot of his followers in this passage. To swallow our pride is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. To bless those who take advantage of us, it's not easy. All right? To love and pray for those who treat us poorly, it's not easy. Those are not easy things Christ is asking us to do if we choose to follow him. But if you know and you trust God, it can be achieved through the life-changing power of the Holy Spirit working in your life. Because as you allow the Spirit of God to transform your heart, you learn that our lives are not about our pride. Our lives aren't really about us. They're about representing Jesus to a lost world. That is our eternal purpose in this life. And it just might leave an eternal impact on someone's life. And someday you might walk to the gates of heaven and Jesus will look at you and there will be other people there that will go, remember when you went the extra mile? That started something in me that led me to Christ. Remember when I insulted you and you paid me back by not insulting me back, but you turned the other cheek. That was the start of me finding Christ. Remember when I did this to you and I took this from you and unjustly I took it from you and yet you gave it to me and you gave me more? That was the beginning of my journey to find Christ. And someday when you stand in heaven, those people will be there and you will have a Father in heaven that will look at you and go, well done, my good and faithful servant. You made an eternal impact on these people's lives and they know me because of what you did and because you were willing to swallow your pride. So church, followers of Jesus Christ, Christians, swallow your pride for kingdom's sake. We are here to make an eternal impact. If you hold on to your pride, all you will ever have is your pride, but you will never make an impact on people's lives as a positive change. Would you pray with me?